And CTV's Colton Praill joins us now with more from Ottawa on this. Colton, first high-stakes summit for the Prime Minister with global leaders. Talk to us about the complexities and challenges the Prime Minister will be faced with in terms of issues on the table, agenda.
Yeah, certainly, Akshay, one of the biggest challenges he's going to run into is the conversations around building and growing the global economy, especially given the challenges that so many countries, including Canada, are facing, which is not only the economic issues with regards to supply chain slowdowns and logistic concerns, but specifically the impacts of global tariffs, the impacts so severe that this is forecast to be the worst decade of economic growth since the 1960s. And the reason for those tariffs is the U.S. President, Donald Trump, who is going to be at these meetings. And so there is going to be a political tightrope to walk in trying to find areas where the G7 can have common ground, where they can talk about issues that they agree on without necessarily causing a situation like we saw in 2018 when Canada was last hosting this summit, where Trump very clearly felt singled out, where he left the summit early. He left and then hopped on Air Force One and was tweeting, insults about Justin Trudeau. After that meeting, it was a very delicate situation that ended quite poorly. And the challenge for Mark Carney in his first G7 is going to be walking that political tightrope, finding a way to discuss the economy, to discuss growing the global economy, while also addressing the fact that all of these nations here are looking to create trade deals with the United States. And experts I spoke to say one way he could potentially look to do that is to talk broader issues, things like supply chains and critical minerals in the overall meetings, while allowing countries themselves to focus on their own trade deals in those one-on-one bilaterals that will happen at the sidelines of this larger meeting.
That's right. I mean, last G7, like you pointed out, was quite a disaster here in Canada when the U.S. pulled out from the communique as well. I believe this time around there may not be there might not be like a formal communication of sorts between the leaders, but there is an issue with the guest countries also at the table. So talk to us about the invitations being extended to Mexico, Ukraine, and India, and how there has been a sort of protest to that.
Yeah, what you're seeing here certainly is an economic consideration from Canada. And to a certain extent, it's a continuation of policies we've seen generally with regards to the G7. So take India right now. It is the most controversial invite that has been accepted at this point in time that Prime Minister Carney sent out. But they've also been at every G7 summit since 2019. And so while it's a delicate situation diplomatically internally for Canada and for the Prime Minister, especially given the investigations into Indian government officials' potential role in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar a few years ago, and the multiple allegations we've seen from a number of Canadian government bodies that India has been engaged in domestic interference inside of Canada, or foreign interference inside of Canada, particularly with regards to our elections. There is also the acceptance that they are one of the largest economies in the world, certainly one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and they have had a place at the table at the G7 for the last several years because of that position that they find themselves in. And so it is a political tightrope. It is a challenge for Mark Carney to walk that line of Canadian Prime Minister, but also of host of the G7 and the desires that exist from other G7 nations. Because as much as this is about Canada getting its economic message across, it's also an opportunity for these other nations to meet each other and to discuss their own economic priorities. The benefit of having some of these other countries that you mentioned, South Korea, Mexico, Japan, Australia, the benefit of having some of those others, Japan in the G7, but the rest outside of this, is that it allows Canada to also focus on those Indo-Pacific trade relations that the country is trying to improve when it comes to diversifying the economy away from the United States.
Indeed. CTV's Colton Praill in Ottawa. Colton, thank you for this.